Hello, my name is Julia Streets, and a very warm welcome to episode 6 of Metaverse What Matters, filmed right here in the Metaverse and available on YouTube, so it is available to everyone. Now, I'm always so excited because I'm joined by Dr. Cationa Wallace. She is the founder of the Responsible Metaverse Alliance. It's a social enterprise and an international movement committed to supporting the development of the metaverse and virtual worlds. This is all about making sure that they are handled responsibly from a perspective of design, deployment, safety, culture, inclusion, operations, and function. So in this series, we talk about what matters in the metaverse and, of course, why the metaverse matters. Kat, how are you? It's great to see you. Great outfit, by the way.
Great to see you too, Jules. Great to see you in the metaverse, and me coming from actually in the real world, Sydney, Australia.
You're in Sydney, Australia. I'm based in London, and it's always great that we connect on this. And just very quickly, if I may, just a bit about me. So I'm the founder and the CEO of a business development, marketing and communications consultancy. I also spend my time traveling the real and the virtual worlds, interviewing leaders, thinking about what they care about. And the metaverse is very much on people's minds at the moment in terms of the technology transformation. So listen, on previous episodes, we've used the structure of the Responsible Metaverse Alliance to break down some really core anchor pillars for the discussion. And I love this framework because everybody I talk to and all the feedback I get is it's just helpful to start to think about key areas of focus. So before we get into the discussion, Kat, would you mind just talking us through the key pillars of your charter?
Yes, so they are first and foremost working with policymakers and regulators across the world in order to try and get standards, regulation and legislation into the metaverse ahead of when it becomes mainstream. The second one is around working with developers to assist developers and creators who are creating applications for the metaverse, do that in a responsible way. Third one is around interoperability. So how does the different virtual worlds that make up the metaverse operate together? And then how does the virtual world, the physical world, and the digital world operate together? And then the final one is absolutely about diversity and inclusion in the metaverse. I know, Julia, is incredibly important to you.
Certainly is. And in previous episodes, we've talked about the diversity, equity and inclusion piece within that. In fact, we've talked about the creators, we've talked about the policymakers as well in governance. So do check out those other episodes because we have explored those. In this one, I'd love to focus a little more on this question about interoperability. And it is, if you like, the bridging of the virtual, the digital and the physical worlds. And there's one thing that particularly comes through clearly in your work, which is this point about operating together in the best interests of humanity. Why does this pillar matter so much?
Yeah, so it matters because we can't develop the metaverse, which is really regarded as the next internet, unless there is strong connection between all of the players who are operating in the metaverse, and also that important connection between the three worlds that we now live in: physical, digital, and virtual. And one of the core things that we need to repeat over and over again, and particularly, Julia, for parents, is that this virtual world that we're in now is actually very real. I know before we referred to the physical world as being a real world, but the physical world is certainly real. The digital world, which is social media and web 2.0, certainly real. But this virtual world is incredibly real. So if we are operating now in at least three worlds, then surely they have to operate together. And I don't think there's been enough thinking or work done yet in this regard. So theoretically, the platform providers should be the ones who care most about it. But what we're concerned about is that the platform providers of the metaverse are actually more concerned about interoperability for profit rather than interoperability for the social good that interoperability can bring. So things like accessibility, reduction of identity, fraud and theft, etc. So definitely the platform providers who we know are working. So for example, the Metaverse Standards Forum was set up as an international body to help large and small metaverse operatives create interoperability. And we hope that they will be building in good ethics and responsible practices as well. So certainly number one is the platform providers, but it's also the regulators. So the regulators must play a significant role in seeing how this notion of interoperability will be monitored and regulated.
And that's a huge, huge ask in so many ways, because there are no geographical boundaries to the metaverse as well. Love to get your thoughts on where they're focused right now.
Yes, so that is right. So there's no state or territory or national boundaries or even really international boundaries when it comes to the metaverse. It is a replication of the world, plus with so much more. By the nature of it being virtual, it can really be whatever the creators choose to create. So, for example, when there was $1 billion of virtual property sold in 2022, there's no limit to virtual property because it can just be created and created. So one of the challenges that regulators do have is around whose jurisdiction is it anyway. And at the Responsible Metaverse Alliance, we've been doing a lot of work with Interpol and police and communities, which I know we've talked about before, in thinking that there is no precedent almost for this jurisdiction. And there are still questions to be answered about how do we impose jurisdiction into a virtual world, which is different to the digital world.
And I think this is what's really fascinating within this conversation about, the bridging of these different worlds. It's almost like a kind of rethinking of how we take the best of what's applied in one world and then also rip up the rule book and take a different approach in another.
That's right. So with a lot of the policymakers we already work with, we are looking at what existing legislation exists and how can that be extended to the metaverse. And now that we have generative AI and all that it brings, also a multiplier effect with the metaverse, that is also requiring some extension of regulation. So looking at what existing laws are relevant to metaverse and then what else is needed that metaverse brings that is unique.
So when we think about some of those dynamics and some of the risks as well, what are the risks that concern you the most?
So predominantly, there are two major risk categories that we are most concerned about. So one is bullying and harassment in the metaverse. The second is identity fraud. So they would be the two that we already know happen and that we are most concerned about, particularly when we're talking about the vulnerable, which would be women, children and minorities. But in addition to those categories, we've got financial fraud, laundering of proceeds of crime. We have cyber attacks. There is other crimes related to organised terrorism and organised crime. So everything you could imagine as a risk, Jules, from a simple corporate type frauds right through to organised crime and terrorism, all of these are able to be perpetrated in the metaverse.
And I think one of the things I'm sort of hopeful about is the fact that actually it feels to me that this discussion is coming to light. It feels to me there are policymakers who are thinking about this very much. And I know that you produced a film, which actually I watched yesterday, which I loved, which just kind of brings to light, what we should be thinking about. Talk to us about the work that's gone behind. That was by Professor Lewis Rosenberg. I believe he was kind of the thinking behind it. Love to share that with the audience.
Yeah, right. Thank you. Yes. So Dr. Lewis Rosenberg is the chief scientist for the Responsible Metaverse Alliance and also the CEO of a company called Unanimous AI. And he created the script, and then we funded, along with some other partners, the production of the short film, Privacy Lost. And we timed its release around the time, just a couple of days before Apple released its new augmented reality, virtual reality headsets, and actually on the same day that Meta announced its Quest 3 release of their virtual reality headsets. So important for us as advocates for safety and responsible metaverse to come to market around the similar time that we're now seeing everything step up with companies like Apple coming to market. So Privacy Lost is a beautiful short film that talks or shows a family sitting at dinner with augmented reality glasses on, and all of the metrics that will be captured from their interaction and all of the ways the augmented reality system affects how they respond to each other. And there are some pretty tense moments. And what we really want to show there is how much data, particularly emotional profiling, behavioral profiling, personality profiling, physical profiling, financial profiling goes on, and how the tech giants who are running these platforms will have data beyond what we can even imagine captured on us, thereby our privacy lost.
And I think one of the things I love about it is because it just brings to everybody's awareness what's going on in a really sort of humanity driven setting. You know, family going out for dinner, they put the glasses on, they get a real sense of kind of what's actually happening at the time. And of course, you know, as we face the relentless march of technology, is in make sure that people really understand the dynamics and what that means for them as well. I mean, I suppose my next question is, what do you want the audience to do?
So I still think there's a big role in education. So just becoming aware of augmented reality, virtual reality, metaverse, mixed reality, extended reality. So just starting to continue to learn about those terms, what they mean. But the most important thing is to get into the metaverse and have a play in here, because not only will most people have either children or siblings or family members that are using metaverse, because at the moment there's at least 500 million young people who are using the metaverse, but also our workplaces within the next 12 months to 2 years will start to use metaverse related technologies in a pretty significant way. So I say get in, play, whether it's games or education or any type of entertainment, doesn't matter, just get in there and get used to being in this virtual world such as what we're in now.
And when you look at the community you're talking to, and you're talking on international stages, on international media, when you look at the kind of the real leaders in this area, because the general citizenship like to look to people to emulate them and follow that, who do you see as being the real ones to follow?
So it's a difficult question if we want to talk about who are the good tech giants to follow, because we traditionally haven't seen the tech giants do well with regard to ethics and technology. But if we looked at companies like Apple, I have great hope that Apple will continue in their reasonably ethical approach to technology with this latest release of their headsets. Microsoft also have done a lot of work in responsible technology over the last few years, and their product is the HoloLens, which has been around for quite a while. We'll also see Samsung and HTC come to market. I also hope that they will be following a responsible path. So they would be the providers that I think to look for. And then with regard to great commentators who are talking about the responsible use of metaverse, then the organizations I would recommend would be XRSI, so that is the XR, so Extended Reality Safety Initiative out of California. Also XR Guild. So XR Guild is an organization where developers and creatives can join and sign up to an ethical promise. We've actually now just appointed a UK representative for the Responsible Metaverse Alliance, Dr. Lau. So she'll be working in the UK and Europe. So I think they would be the people in the organizations I think that the audience would do well to follow.
That's brilliant, because actually, as you say, it's all part of education, and be able to follow, research and writing, but also get in and play, get comfortable with it. And that's exactly why we do this series, because we want to bring it to life, get people to get a real sense of what the future of work, life and play could look like. Now, listen, I'm really pleased because we have great engagement. We have a hashtag. Of course we have a hashtag. It's called hashtag Ask Cat. I'm going to put a question to you, but before we do that, I'm really curious, when you think about the potential of the metaverse, what are you really optimistic about?
Even though I work a lot on the risks and the responsible nature of it, and I'm the one championing for regulation, I am beyond excited about the opportunities that this brings. And predominantly for me, it's the opportunities around accessibility for people who potentially in the physical world or the digital world don't have the same ability to have access to extraordinary experiences. I think the metaverse will provide that, although there is questions about accessibility with regard to the cost and of the headsets, etc. So I love accessibility, but mostly for me it would be education and how children can, because I mean most schooling systems are pretty broken now and still working from curriculums from 100 years ago. The ability for children to have immersive experiences and learn about history, learn about biology, learn about the world in a fully immersive environment, I think is an extraordinary opportunity.
It's phenomenal, isn't it? It's really phenomenal. Listen, thank you everybody so much for all your questions in the past, which I've had the privilege of representing you and putting to Cat. We ask you to ask your question using the hashtag AskCat. And we've had questions about ChatGPT, biases, the pace of adoption, also thinking about public and private metaverses. So if you're curious, go back to see the other episodes. I've had one question that's come through, and this is again returning to the question of the pace of change. And so since our last episode, we've seen the acceleration around ChatGPT particularly. And wondering whether the heightening awareness that this has brought is giving pause for thought and development slowing, or do you see it as an accelerating factor?
It's almost both. So everyone was kind of metaverse crazy. And then in November 2022, of course, ChatGPT was released, and then following on that, a number of other generative AI products were released, and people thought, oh, the metaverse conversation will slow down and everyone's back to looking at AI. But in fact, that's not what's happened. What's happened is generative AI is now supercharging the metaverse. And so we'll now see avatars driven by generative AI, and we'll see virtual products and virtual spokespeople based on generative AI. So the whole multiplier effect is at work. And in fact, we can't talk about the metaverse now without knowing that a huge part of it will be powered by artificial intelligence. So they are really the conversations, and we've seen the conversations go two ways with regard to generative AI. One is that it's fantastic and will save so much time. It's a real productivity tool. And the other is, finally that we see that AI can pose an existential risk to humanity. So how are we going to slow it down? So I think it's doing both things, Jules. It's speeding up, and there's lots of people who are trying to slow it down, such as with the open letter that was released by a lot of the tech luminaries, and then recently from the AI Safety Council, they released a statement around AI poses a risk equal to nuclear war and to pandemics. And so we need to be very careful with it.
It's fascinating, isn't it? And I think that the fact that people are curious, that they are aware, that they are researching and writing, and then it's coming to the highest tables in the land on policy and government's minds, and also that the media have really caught on to this kind of two stream of is it accelerating or is it giving us pause for thought? And we have to have a really good discussion around that. That's why I also love these episodes, as a chance to get your thoughts on that. And thank you as always for the questions that come through using the Ask Cat hashtag. So tell me, what's coming up next for you?
So we've got a couple of big projects underway. So one is continuing to work on standards for the metaverse. So the standards that we have recommended and are published in a white paper now include standards related to the targeted influence and manipulation of individuals. So that's one thing. Second thing is we've held our first policing in the metaverse think tank. We'll plan 2 more think tanks to deep dive into policing in the metaverse over the next 6 months. We will do more work around what we ideally want to build, and we're trying to get funding at the moment for, is to build a bullying and harassment simulator so that policymakers can actually recognize that bullying and harassment is real in the metaverse. So that's another project. And then other than that, Jules, I'm headed to Central and South America to spend a bit of time with Indigenous communities.
Amazing, amazing. It's going to be a phenomenal. Well, first of all, it's great to have your time. I mean, clearly we've got a lot going on, but also it's good to getting your thoughts as we go forward with this series as well. And we're going next episode, we're going to talk about standards. So we'd love to pick up on that if you're happy to share some thoughts on that. A couple of things that are happening in my world. So I'm so excited to be hosting and indeed have been curating the Metaverse stream at FinTech Week London. So we're going to be bringing together panels of discussions, really seeing the use cases that come through in the metaverse, because as you were saying, this is all about understanding what it can do for business, what it can do for us as citizens, and also as a global community as well. Kat, thank you as always for your time. It's been great to have you on the show again.
Thank you, Jules. And of course, I did neglect to mention that, of course, I this year will be in the Australian series of Shark Tank, one of the sharks. And that will be another project that will be released this year. Unfortunately, not a lot of metaverse related investments for me on the Shark Tank series, but hopefully next year that might change.
Well, I can't wait to see that when it comes out, and I'm sure it'll be available. It's available globally, I'm sure. So growing your following, but also your intention to support diverse entrepreneurs as they go on their entrepreneurial journey as well. Dr. Cationa Wallace, the founder of the Responsible Metaverse Alliance. Thank you again. Thank you to everybody, as always, for watching Metaverse What Matters, filmed right here in the Metaverse, talking about all matters Metaverse and why the metaverse matters. Available on YouTube, available for everybody. So do follow, share, and don't forget to send your questions in using the hashtag AskCat. I've been Judith Streets. Thank you for watching. And once again, until next time, goodbye.